John Miller stood at the vast window of his office on Centauri Station, watching the stars. After 15 years as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, he knew that today would change everything. The weight of his decision pressed down on his shoulders like a physical thing. Ambassador. The final vote results are in. John turned to see Lisa Warren at the door. His aide looked tired. They were all tired. Decades of playing referee to squabbling alien species had worn humanity thin. Let me guess. They voted to leave. John's voice was steady, though his heart raced. Lisa nodded. By a significant margin. Earth and all human colonies will withdraw from the Council in 60 days. John sighed and returned to his desk, sitting heavily in his chair. Reports covered the surface. Border fights between the Vex and Zoltans, resource disputes, trade violations. Always the same problems, always humans expected to fix them. Have you told the Council yet? Lisa asked. No. I wanted to be certain first. John picked up a small metal disc, the official notice of withdrawal. They won't believe it. They think we need them more than they need us. A soft chime indicated an incoming call. The face of an Arcturian appeared on John's screen, skin blue and eyes large. Ambassador Miller, the Zoltan delegation is once again blocking our mining rights in the Proxima sector, the alien said without greeting. We require human mediation immediately. High Counselor, John replied, I'll be addressing the full council in 1 hour. This matter will need to wait. The Arcturian's eyes narrowed. This is most inconvenient. The humans have always. John ended the call. And that's exactly the problem. An hour later, John entered the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. The circular room rose hundreds of feet upward, with thousands of seats arranged in rings. Each seat held a representative from across the galaxy. Tall, short, scaled, furred, some not even solid in form. The oldest and most powerful species occupied the inner ring. Arcturians, with their ancient civilization. Zoltans, masters of technology. And the Vex, whose empire spanned 3 spiral arms. These 3 had founded the Council millennia ago. Humans, despite being newcomers, had quickly earned a place among them because of their unique ability to understand different perspectives. Now John walked to the central platform. The room grew quiet. Representatives of the Galactic Council, he began, his voice carrying to every corner. For 3 centuries, humanity has served this body. We have mediated your conflicts. We have found compromises when you saw none. We have kept the peace. Murmurs spread through the chamber. John continued. But we have watched this council grow complacent. You rely on humans to solve problems you create yourselves. Today, I deliver official notice that Earth and all human colonies will withdraw from the Galactic Council in 60 days. The chamber erupted. The Zoltan representative, a tall figure with metallic skin, stood up. This is merely a negotiation tactic, the Zoltan said loudly. Humans cannot survive alone in this galaxy. A Vex representative hissed agreement. You will return when you realize your insignificance. John placed the metal disc on the platform. It projected Earth's official seal. This is not a negotiation. Starting today, we will begin transferring our responsibilities. In 60 days, all human peacekeepers, diplomats, and technical staff will depart Council space. A smaller alien from a minor species called out, but who will protect us from the larger powers? John looked at the frightened representative with sympathy. That was always the Council's job. Perhaps it's time they remembered that. As he left the chamber, the noise grew to a roar. Some were angry, some panicked. The Arcturian leader caught up with John in the hallway. You cannot be serious, Miller. The Council needs humans. John stopped walking. That's exactly the problem, High Counselor. The Council was meant to be a partnership. Instead, we became your caretakers. It's time for us to look after our own interests. The Arcturian had no reply. In his office, John looked out at the stars again. Lisa stood beside him. "Do you think they'll manage without us?" she asked. John shook his head slowly. "Honestly, I don't think they remember how." 2 weeks after John Miller delivered the withdrawal notice, the first serious fight broke out on Centauri Station. Susan Clark, human security chief, rushed down the wide hallway toward the trade negotiation room. Her team followed close behind. "What happened this time?" Susan asked her deputy as they ran. "Arcturian and Zoltan delegates. The Arcturians wanted mining rights on Proxima 4. The Zoltans said no. Then punches were thrown." Susan sighed. "Third incident this week." They reached the room to find 2 alien delegates wrestling on the floor. The Arcturian's blue skin was turning purple with rage. The Zoltan's metallic body gleamed under the lights as they grappled. "Break it up," Susan shouted. Her team moved in, separating the aliens. The Arcturian pointed a long finger. "The Zoltans are thieves. Those minerals belong to us." "Your claim is false," the Zoltan said coldly. "Where is the human mediator? We demand a human decision." Susan put her hands up. "There is no human mediator anymore. You two need to solve this yourselves." Both aliens stared at her in shock. Elsewhere on the station, Eric Palmer walked through the main engineering section. As head of the Human Engineering Corps, he was trying to document everything before the humans left. A young engineer called to him from an access panel. "Sir, I found another problem," the woman said. "This power coupling has a human fix that's not in any manual. Without it, this whole section could lose gravity." Eric rubbed his tired eyes. "Add it to the list." The list was already too long. Humans had been fixing station problems with clever solutions for years. None of these fixes were in official records. Eric worried the station might fall apart when the humans left. Back in his office, John Miller received yet another visitor. This time it was the representative from the Krell, a peaceful species from the Outer Rim. "Please, Ambassador," the small alien pleaded. "The Vex are already claiming our farming worlds. They say without humans here, we must accept their protection or face consequences." John felt a pang of regret. "I'm sorry. Earth has made its decision. But you cannot leave us to the Vex. They will take everything." "The Council has other strong members," John said. "The Arcturians or Zoltans could help you." The Krell representative made a sound like sad laughter. "They only care about their own interests. Only humans ever cared about fairness." After the Krell left, Lisa entered with more reports. "The Vex have announced claims on 7 contested systems," she said. "They're moving fast, knowing we're leaving." John wasn't surprised. They've been waiting for this chance. "Some staff are having second thoughts," Lisa admitted. "They worry about what happens to the smaller species." "I worry too," John said. "But Earth has been carrying the Council for too long. We've put aside our own needs to solve everyone else's problems." Later that day, John attended a council meeting. The room felt tense. When he entered, conversation stopped. The Arcturian leader approached him. "Your engineers are leaving too quickly," the blue alien said. "Systems are already failing." "We're documenting everything," John replied. "Your technicians need to start learning." "Our technicians are not engineers," the Arcturian said stiffly. "That has always been the human role." "Not anymore." Across the room, John noticed representatives from smaller species huddled together, looking worried. They kept glancing his way. The Vex delegation stood apart, looking almost pleased. That night, John couldn't sleep. From his window, he watched ships move around the station. A Krell transport was leaving, loaded with families. They were fleeing before the troubles truly began. His communication panel beeped. A message from Earth. "Maintain withdrawal schedule. No exceptions." John stared at the message for a long time. Outside his window, the first cracks in the Galactic Council were already showing. In 46 more days, humans would be gone completely. He wondered what would be left when they returned. If they returned. The 60-day transition period ended. On Centauri Station's main docking bay, Captain Peter Grant watched his crew load the last supplies onto the Earth vessel Horizon. The huge ship would lead the final convoy of human vessels away from Council space. Status report. Peter asked his first officer. All systems ready, sir. The last human personnel will be aboard in 20 minutes. We leave on schedule. Peter nodded. Through the large windows, he could see crowds of aliens gathering to watch their departure. Some looked angry. Others seemed afraid. The council administrator is requesting to speak with you, an officer said. Peter sighed. Put him through. The face of Zell Thorne, the Arcturian who had taken over station administration, appeared on the nearby screen. Captain Grant, the blue-skinned alien, said formally, I wish to confirm your departure plans. We leave in exactly 30 minutes, Peter replied. As scheduled. Very well. I assure you the transition will be smooth. We have prepared for human absence thoroughly. Peter knew this wasn't true. Just yesterday, 3 human engineers had been called to fix life support systems that were already failing. But it wasn't his problem anymore. Good luck, Administrator, Peter said simply. As the final minutes ticked down, the last human diplomats boarded. Susan Clark, the security chief, was among the last to arrive. How does it look out there? Peter asked her. Susan's face was grim. Not good. The Zoltans and Vex nearly came to blows at the final session. The smaller species are terrified. Some asked if they could come with us. And you told them no. I had to. Orders. The ship's intercom announced final boarding. Peter took one last look at the station that had been home to so many humans for so long. Then he headed to the bridge. All ships report ready, Captain, his navigator said. Then let's go home. The Horizon's engines powered up. One by one, the human ships detached from the station and formed a convoy. Behind them, Centauri Station grew smaller in the view screens. They were barely out of sight when the first problems hit the station. In the diplomatic quarters, the artificial gravity suddenly failed. Aliens of all species floated helplessly while emergency systems struggled to respond. In the council chamber, Administrator Zell Thorne tried to maintain order during his first official meeting. The Vex representative interrupted him. With humans gone, the trade agreements must be rewritten, the Vex said. The outer systems now fall under our protection. You have no right, shouted the representative of a smaller world. We have the largest fleet in this sector, the Vex replied coldly. That gives us every right. The meeting dissolved into arguments. Zell Thorne banged his ceremonial staff for order, but no one listened. In the past, a human mediator would have calmed things down. Now there was no one. Meanwhile, a trade summit between 7 species collapsed completely. Without human moderators, they couldn't agree on anything. The delegates left angrily, canceling vital resource shipments to 12 developing worlds. In the security center, the newly appointed Zoltan security forces struggled to maintain order. Fights broke out in the civilian sectors as rumors spread about food shortages. All this happened in the first 6 hours after human departure. On the horizon, Peter Grant received numerous distress calls from the station. Under his new orders, he was forced to ignore them all. Captain, his communications officer said, the Krell are begging for assistance. The Vex are moving ships into their home system. Peter's hands tightened on his chair. We can't help them. Not anymore. Sir, they say there will be violence. Forward the message to Earth. That's all we can do. As the human convoy crossed the border out of Council space, Peter looked at the star map. Behind them, the carefully maintained peace of centuries was unraveling in a matter of days. The moment humans left, chaos had begun. 1 month after the human withdrawal, Kate Dias sat in her new home on Nova Terra, Earth's largest colony. The house still had empty boxes everywhere. Moving from Centauri Station had been hard, especially for her children. Mom, look, her son said, pointing at the news screen. That's where we used to live. Kate looked up. The screen showed Centauri Station, but it looked different. Parts of it were dark. The reporter explained that the station was now divided into 3 sections, each controlled by a different faction. The Galactic Council has officially split, the reporter said. The Arcturians, Zoltans, and Vex each claim to be the true council. Fighting has broken out in disputed areas. Kate turned off the screen. That's enough news for today. Will my friends be okay? Her daughter asked. Licky and her family. Kate hugged her daughter. I'm sure they're fine. But she wasn't sure at all. Licky's species, the Narration, were peaceful scholars. They had no defenses against the larger powers. Across human space, others watched the growing crisis too. In the Earth Defense Headquarters, Admiral Ben Howard studied fleet movement reports. It's worse than we predicted, he told his staff. The Vex have moved on 4 systems already. The Zoltans are responding with their own ships. Casualties, someone asked. In the thousands and rising. Without human peacekeepers, they're using weapons that were banned for centuries. In another part of the galaxy, once peaceful trading worlds were arming themselves. The Trell, a species known for their art, now built weapons. The Mirax, famous for their healing skills, created poisons. Everyone feared being conquered by the major powers. Back on Centauri Station, Administrator Zelforn called an emergency meeting. Only half the council members showed up. The rest had fled or joined other factions. We must restore order, Zelforn announced to the half-empty room. I propose. A loud explosion cut him off. The lights flickered. Alarms sounded throughout the station. Primary reactor failure in Sector 7, a voice announced. Evacuate immediately. The delegates ran from the room in panic. No one stayed to hear Zelforn's proposals. In Sector 7, 3 residential areas housed mainly civilian families. With the reactor failing, they had minutes to escape. Security forces that once would have helped with evacuation were nowhere to be seen. A Zoltan engineer tried to fix the reactor. This needs human tools, he said in frustration. Their maintenance logs ended when they left. I don't know what they were doing to keep this running. The reactor stabilized briefly, but 2 hours later it failed completely. The sector was evacuated just in time, but thousands lost their homes and possessions. At Earth's monitoring outposts near the edge of former Council space, sensors detected massive fleet movements. The 3 major powers were positioning for war. We're picking up weapons signatures we haven't seen in active use for centuries, an officer reported to Admiral Howard. Planet killers, ships with enough power to destroy entire worlds. Howard's face was grim. How many civilian worlds are in the potential conflict zones? At least 27, sir. Population in the billions. On Novaterra, Kate Diaz received a message from an old friend who had stayed behind. The message was brief and frightening. Everything is falling apart. The treaties are gone. The Vex say they will take what they want. Please tell your government we need humans back. Kate didn't know what to do with the message. Earth had made its decision. They were not going back. That night, as she looked at the stars, she wondered how many of those distant lights now shone on worlds at war. The peace humans had maintained for so long had collapsed in just 1 month. And things were getting worse by the day. 6 months after humans left, the former Council space looked nothing like before. Where once there had been order, now there was only conflict. Star systems changed hands weekly. Trade routes that had been safe for centuries were now dangerous. In his office on Earth, President Frank Williams studied the latest reports. The news wasn't good. 3 more refugee ships approaching our borders, his advisor said. They're begging for sanctuary. Frank looked out the window at the peaceful Earth sky. How many people? About 10,000, mostly families from the Narration and Trell worlds. The Narration. Frank remembered them as peaceful scholars. What happened to their worlds? The Vex took control. They're strip mining the planets for resources. Anyone who objects disappears. Frank closed his eyes briefly. This was the 4th such request this week. Have them proceed to Processing Station 5. We'll grant temporary asylum." After his advisor left, Frank called an emergency cabinet meeting. Earth's policy of non-interference was being tested daily. Meanwhile, at his farm in Ohio, former Ambassador John Miller was surprised to see a shuttle land in his field. No ships were scheduled to visit this remote area. He walked outside cautiously. A figure emerged from the shuttle, tall with metallic skin that caught the sunlight. A Zoltan. "Ambassador Miller," the alien said, "I am Vextor, formerly your counterpart in the council." "I remember," John said. "What brings you to Earth?" "To my farm specifically." The Zoltan looked uncomfortable. "I come with a message from the Zoltan hierarchy. We wish to offer you an apology." John blinked in surprise. "An apology?" "Yes. We undervalued humans. We treated you as convenient helpers rather than equal partners. This was unwise." John invited the Zoltan inside. Over simple tea, which the alien tried without complaint, Vextor explained the situation. "The council space is destroyed," he said. "The Vex control half the major systems now. They grow stronger every day. The Arcturians fight them, but they lose ground. My people try to stay neutral, but soon we will have to choose a side." "What do you want from us?" John asked. "We offer concessions, important systems, trade rights, technology we previously withheld, all in exchange for human return." Back in his office, President Williams reviewed the offers that had arrived from various alien factions. The Arcturians had sent a formal delegation. The Zoltan had sent Vextor to see John. Even some Vex factions had made contact. "They're all saying the same thing," his advisor noted. "They want humans back." Frank stood up and paced. "For 300 years, we served the council. We kept the peace, and they took us for granted." "Yes, sir, but now innocent people are dying." Outside Earth's borders, a massive refugee crisis was building. Millions fled the expanding conflicts. Some headed for human space, hoping for mercy. Others escaped to remote areas, trying to disappear. On Novaterra, Kate Diaz watched the refugee camp grow outside her city. Thousands of aliens lived in temporary shelters, grateful for human protection. Kate volunteered at the camp medical center. That day, she treated a young Narran child. "Where is Licky?" the child asked in broken English. "She was my friend." Kate recognized the name of her daughter's former playmate from Centauri Station. "I don't know," she admitted. An older Narran nearby looked down sadly. "Licky's family stayed on our homeworld when the Vex came. They are gone now." That evening, Kate joined a growing protest outside the colonial government building. The crowd carried signs, "Help them," and "Go back," and "Save the Akeonsil." Kate had never been political before, but seeing the suffering changed her. Humans had the power to help. Shouldn't they use it? In his farm kitchen, John Miller made a decision. He called President Williams directly. "Frank, I've been thinking. Maybe it's time we went back. But not as servants. As leaders." The president was quiet for a long moment. "I've been thinking the same thing." 1 year had passed since the human withdrawal. Earth and its colonies thrived in isolation, but the rest of the galaxy had fallen into what historians now call the Galactic Dark Age. On the moon base, Laura Bennett prepared for the most important presentation of her career. As Earth's new ambassador of extragalactic affairs, she had spent months analyzing the situation beyond their borders. The meeting room filled with Earth's leaders. President Williams sat at the center, with military, economic, and scientific advisors around him. Former Ambassador John Miller sat quietly in the back, invited as a special consultant. "Ambassador Bennett, you have the floor," the president said. Laura stood. "Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be direct. Our isolation policy has benefited Earth in the short term. Our economy is strong. Our borders are secure. But the long-term outlook is troubling." She displayed a map of former council space. Large sections glowed red. The red areas show active conflict zones. They've tripled in the past 6 months. At this rate, instability will reach our borders within 2 years. She changed the display to show trade routes. Former trade networks have collapsed. 17 formerly prosperous worlds now face total economic failure. On 6 worlds, famine has already begun. The room was silent as she continued. Centauri Station, once the symbol of cooperation, is now abandoned and adrift. Our telescopes can see it as a dark spot against its sun. An image appeared of the once magnificent station, now partially destroyed and without lights. The Vex Confederation has conquered 3 independent systems, Laura said, but they struggle to control them. Reports of sabotage and rebellion come daily. Admiral Howard spoke up. What do you recommend, Ambassador? Laura took a deep breath. I believe continued isolation will eventually harm Earth. The instability will spread. Resources we need will become scarce. And frankly, the suffering of innocent species will continue. The debate lasted hours. Some argued for continued isolation. Others pushed for limited involvement. By evening, they reached a decision. On Luna's far side, away from Earth's view, a secret meeting took place. In a secure facility, human leaders sat across from representatives of the major former council species. The aliens essentially begged for human return. They offered concessions, territories, and technology. They promised humans would have leadership roles, not just mediator positions. John Miller watched them with mixed feelings. These same aliens had once dismissed humans as unimportant. Now they couldn't survive without them. 2 days later, President Williams addressed all of humanity. Billions watched from Earth and the colonies. For 1 year, we have stood apart from galactic affairs, he began. We watched as the council we helped build collapsed into chaos. We saw species we once called friends suffer, and we ask ourselves, what is our responsibility? He paused, looking directly into the camera. Today, I announce the Galactic Restoration Initiative. We will re-engage with galactic affairs, but under new terms. Humans will not return as equals to those who once dismissed us. We will return as leaders. He outlined a plan for stabilizing former council space. Human peacekeepers would secure humanitarian corridors. Human diplomats would establish new treaties. And Earth would lead, not follow. Across human space, the response was mixed. Some cheered the chance to help. Others feared being drawn into alien conflicts. On Novaterra, Kate Diaz watched the speech with neighbors and refugee families. When it ended, a Naren elder touched her arm gently. Thank you, the alien said simply. You saved many lives. In Earth orbit, Admiral Karen Shaw inspected the fleet that would lead humanity's return to the stars. 50 ships, the best Earth had built. Their mission was peace, but they carried weapons. This time, humans would negotiate from strength. Admiral, all ships report ready, her second-in-command said. Karen nodded. Set course for Centauri Station. It's time to rebuild what was lost. As the ships prepared to depart, Karen thought about the journey ahead. Restoring order would not be easy. Some would resist human leadership, but the alternative was continued chaos. The fleet moved into formation, preparing to jump to faster-than-light speed. Humanity was going back to the stars. 2 years after humans first left, Centauri Station looked very different. Once abandoned and broken, it now shone brightly against the darkness of space. The repairs were not yet complete, but the station was alive again. John Miller stood at the large window of the director's office, the same window where 2 years ago he had watched the stars and decided humans should leave. Now he watched ships come and go from the busy docking bays. A chime sounded. Director Miller, the representatives are ready, his assistant said over the intercom. John straightened his formal uniform and walked to the main assembly hall. Where once the Galactic Council had met, now the human-led cooperative of allied species gathered. The circular chamber was filled with delegates, but the arrangement had changed. Humans occupied the central positions. As John entered, The room quieted. He took his place at the center podium, looking out at the gathered species. 2 years ago, I stood in this room and announced humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council, he began. Today, I am proud to open the 4th official session of the cooperative. The delegates applauded. Not all species had joined the cooperative. Some still resisted human leadership, but many had recognized that humans brought stability and fairness. Our first agenda item is the reconstruction of the Narration homeworld, John said. Admiral Shaw, your report, please. Karen Shaw stepped forward. Her fleet had been key to establishing secure zones throughout former Council space. The Vex mining operations have been stopped, she reported. Environmental repair has begun. Narration refugees can start returning next month. Kate Diaz listened from her seat among the human delegates. After her work with refugees on Nova Terra, she had been asked to join the cooperative's humanitarian division. Now, she helped coordinate relief efforts across multiple worlds. The old power structure had been completely changed. The elder races, Arcturians, Zoltans, and Vex, no longer controlled everything. Their representatives sat in the outer rings, required to earn back trust through cooperation. After the session, John met with his leadership team in a private room. Progress report, he asked. 17 more worlds have applied to join the cooperative, Laura Bennett said. Most are smaller species seeking protection. The Vex resistance is weakening. Admiral Shaw added. Their main faction still fights, but 3 splinter groups have opened talks with us. The trade routes are 60% restored, another official reported. Food shipments have reached all critical areas. John nodded, satisfied but not complacent. What about the redundancy systems? This was important. Humans had learned their lesson. The new cooperative was built with multiple backups for everything. No single species, not even humans, could control critical systems alone. All stations now have triple redundancy, the engineering chief confirmed. No one will become dependent on a single species again. Later, John visited the station's observation deck. He found Kate Diaz there, looking out at the stars. Thinking about home? He asked. She smiled. Nova Terra is home now. But I was thinking about how much has changed. For better or worse. Better, I think. We needed to leave for them to understand our value, and we needed to see what happened when we did. John nodded. The Arcturian representative said something interesting today. He said their oldest histories talk about balance, how sometimes you must step back to move forward. Wise words, Kate said, though I doubt they believed them 2 years ago. A group of alien children ran past, laughing. They were school students from various species, learning together on the station. John watched them with satisfaction. The cooperative isn't perfect. We still have holdouts. Some Vex factions will fight us for years, but we're building something stronger than the Council ever was. Because of human leadership, Kate asked. Partly, John said, but mainly because we all learned a hard lesson. The moment humans left, the Council collapsed into chaos. Now we're making sure no one species can ever cause that again. Not even us. As they looked out at the stars, ships passed by the window. Some heading out to troubled areas that still needed help, others bringing people home. The work of rebuilding would take decades. But for the first time in 2 years, the galaxy had hope again.